I don't like to brag, but we're kind of proud of that ragged old flag.
I ain't gonna work on Maggie's farm no more. No, I ain't gonna work on Maggie's farm no more.
Thank you for joining News Now Northwest for this second part of our three-part audit on Monsanto. This is the newest Monsanto facility in the region, and there is no contact made in this video. However, my presence here drew their attention, and showing up at the next location was just too much, as you'll see in the conclusion of this series. In this video, I'll explain what they do at this breeding facility. Also, I'll explain why I think Monsanto and the GMOs in particular that they use are dangerous. My sources, as usual, are listed in the description. According to the Monsanto website, this corn research facility opened in 2011. The news release stated, "The breeding station will be devoted exclusively to using the double haploid advanced breeding technology," which I will get into exactly what that is later on. The website also states within about 10 years, 50% of new corn lines in America will have gone through Othello. Monsanto started its corn breeding in Othello in 2006. The initial corn breeding in this area took place at the facility featured in part 3 of this series, which is just down the road. Since 2011, those operations have moved permanently to this location. According to an article in the Tri-City Herald, Monsanto hoped to have farmers using seed from this facility by 2016. In 2018, we are 2 years past that mark. Seeds developed in this station are flowing into our nation's food supply. Let's look a little deeper into what exactly Monsanto is doing. The topic of GMO foods is a very controversial one. We can argue all day on the usefulness or morality of GMO foods with valid points on both sides. For the report on this audit, I want to focus on Monsanto and their application of GMOs. As mentioned before, this facility exclusively uses a double haploid breeding technology. Here's a video clip to explain how it works.
The first step is creating haploid individuals. So this is accomplished by pollinating our breeding populations with a special variety of corn that when it pollinates our breeding populations, it creates individuals on those ears, individual seeds that are haploid. They only have half the normal amount of DNA, and it all comes from the mother plant.
In my research, I read the special variety of corn used to pollinate has an enzyme that increases the amount of haploid seeds. Once they have haploid seeds, here's the rest of the process.
So the second step involves taking those haploid kernels. We germinate them in a special solution that effectively doubles the number of chromosomes in the cells. And if those cells continue to divide and produce a tassel and an ear shoot, and we can pollinate that plant, the seed that's produced will be an instant inbred line.
This breeding process does not appear to be all that bad. In fact, from a purely scientific point of view, it's really cool. Here's one more clip to help me explain why this is so important to the breeding process when trying to find new and genetically pure lines of corn.
The traditional inbreeding process takes on average 8 generations or 8 cropping seasons to develop an inbred line that is 99.6% inbred. Comparatively, the double haploid process only takes 3 generations or 3 cropping seasons to develop an inbred line that is 100% inbred.
Okay, now that I have tried to explain the breeding process, I will move on to the way Monsanto uses GMOs. As I mentioned before, there are lots of applications for GMOs, some good and some bad. Think about the history of Monsanto as a company. Do you trust them to do what is right? Have you ever heard the term Roundup Ready? As we discussed in part 1, Monsanto created glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup. Monsanto sells Roundup Ready seeds. With these seeds, you can spray Roundup over the plant while it is growing, and it will not die like the rest of the plants around it. Here is a short video clip demonstrating how this concept works with canola.
A power line runs along the edge of Percy Schmeisser's property. As usual, the power company had the surrounding vegetation controlled by applying the herbicide Roundup. But in spite of this powerful chemical, volunteer canola plants continued to thrive among the weeds.
This canola was sprayed with 4 times the normal rate that you would spray Roundup, and yet it has not died. So it's a very powerful resistant canola to Roundup. So it's definitely Monsanto's seed that is here.
It is a great sell to farmers for weed control. However, for a farmer to use the seeds, they must sign a grower's contract with Monsanto. In these contracts, a few things farmers agree to are letting Monsanto workers onto their fields with or without prior consent, letting Monsanto investigators have access to all records for a period of up to 3 years after the last Monsanto crop, and not to use the seeds produced from Monsanto plants in future years, to name a few. There are many more alarming aspects of the contracts. I feel these are the most damaging to a farmer, as they really give Monsanto control over a farmer and the farm. Think of the control over the food supply these contracts give Monsanto. Also, because Monsanto has patents on these seeds, if they find their plants growing on a neighboring farmer's field who is not under contract, they sue for patent infringement. This means Monsanto owns living things through their patents, a scary concept if you stop and think about it. If you're interested in this, check out the documentary, David vs. Monsanto. It is the story of a man's battle against Monsanto about this issue. Check out this clip highlighting how Monsanto used patent infringement to sue this farmer and take his livelihood when he never even used their seed.
And the judge ruled this: number one, it does not matter how a farmer is contaminated. And he went on to say, cross-pollination with pollen flown in the wind by birds, bees, or by direct seeds blown in the wind by or farmers' transportation. If you're contaminated against your wishes, you no longer own your seeds or plants and become the ownership of Monsanto under patent law.
One way around the bad publicity of suing a farmer for saving seed to use for next season's crop is to develop a sterile plant. Enter Terminator technology. This is where a plant is genetically altered to produce pollen that, after pollinating another plant, will produce sterile seeds, making the practice of seed saving useless, and at the same time forcing a farmer to continue to buy seed. One of the scary things is if pollen from these plants drift to other fields, it can pass those traits on to other plants. Because of widespread disapproval, Monsanto has pledged not to use this Terminator technology. I'm not sure I trust Monsanto to stick to their word here. They even own the patent on this technology. There just seems to be too much control and money at stake here for Monsanto to resist. We will see if they decide to use these patented seeds in the future. Monsanto decided to put that Terminator technology on hold, at least for now. So let's get back to the products we know Monsanto is using. A problem experienced with glyphosate is the ability of some weeds to become resistant to it, especially in soybean and cotton crops. Monsanto needed something stronger to kill off more of these weeds. Dicamba is the name of the powerful chemical Monsanto decided to use to deal with weeds building up stronger immunity to traditional herbicides. The big downfall with dicamba is the tendency for it to drift to neighboring fields, which of course damages and kills crops and other plants there. Monsanto showed its true colors in 2016 when it introduced its dicamba-resistant seeds and herbicide system in the United States for soybeans. According to a Reuters article in early 2016, Monsanto had to choose to either sell its dicamba-resistant seeds that had not had its accompanying herbicide approved by the EPA, or lose out on the entire growing season. The entire seed stock of soybeans Monsanto had slated for the U.S. in 2016 had the trait to make it resistant to dicamba. Monsanto faced selling the seeds without the approved companion herbicide or not selling any soybean seeds in 2016 in the United States. In a move that showed their confidence in being rubber-stamped by the EPA, Monsanto decided to go ahead and sell the seeds. In one of the few times the EPA was looking out for citizens, the new herbicide was not given the fast track and not approved. In fact, it took an additional 11 months for Monsanto to satisfy the concern of the EPA that the drift problem experienced with dicamba had been resolved and the typical drift seen with the chemical would not happen with Monsanto's new dicamba products. The problem is farmers who bought the seeds had no matching herbicide, so they had to choose between 3 not-so-good alternatives. Hire workers to pull weeds, use less effective glyphosate, or illegally spray an older version of dicamba at the risk of damage to other nearby farms and plants. The result was a rash of illegal spraying damaging 42,000 acres of crops alone in Missouri, as well as swaths of crops in 9 other states. According to Reuters, Monsanto was repeatedly warned by crop scientists as far back as 2011 about the dangers of releasing a dicamba-resistant seed without the accompanying herbicide. The problem is, the seeds and the accompanying chemicals are approved by separate agencies. The FDA approves the seeds, and the EPA approves the accompanying chemicals. I highlighted this to show just one more example of Monsanto not caring about the rules or concerns about health and safety. Did the controversy over dicamba and the concern for its propensity to drift cause concern for Monsanto? Does the fact that farmers in India are committing suicide after being locked into contracts with Monsanto involving dicamba make them think twice? No way. As usual, they used their own testing and got it approved by the EPA. Then, in order to make sure this product is sold and pushed hard here in the U.S., they offered a huge incentive to U.S. farmers. If farmers use dicamba-resistant seed and its accompanying herbicide called XtendiMax with Vapor Grip, they could receive a refund for up to 50% off the sticker price of that chemical. Dicamba is so controversial and untrusted, several states have made their own regulations to give windows of time when it is okay to spray this herbicide to minimize drift. Even the EPA-approved version of XtendiMax appears to have the traditional problems dicamba experiences with drifting. According to research done by a weed scientist at the University of Missouri, total damage from dicamba drift in 2017 covered 3.6 million acres in 25 states. Of course, Monsanto blames the farmers for spraying illegal chemicals. They also argued they could not have foreseen the disjointed approval process would set off a crop damage crisis. Sounds like maybe they just didn't look into it at all to me. The content in this second part of 3 is to expose what is happening to agriculture today. These aren't the good old days anymore, folks. I encourage you to look up your state laws regarding the use of dicamba. The way to stand up to these practices is knowledge. Arm yourself. Come back for the 3rd and final installment and more contact from Monsanto. Please like the video and share it with everyone you know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Monsanto or any of the subjects covered here. Just remember to be civil to others and respect the rights of everybody to voice their opinion. If you like our content, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to be notified when we upload new content.